Shema Israel. Hope you enjoy this next study. My name's Dee. This is my wife, Millie.
So if you like what you see, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if you wish to reach out to us, you can email us at devotedtoyah@gmail.com. Did you want to talk about the different types of disciples going into that? So go ahead. That's we don't need to share a screen for that. That's just a conversation there.
Well, based on the passage though. So it's the same, I think it's the same passage we're focusing on, that Moses had told them stay inside your houses. That's it. Just stay inside on Shabbat, on the Sabbath. Everybody stay in their tents. Okay? We talked about I brought this up. A similar topic to what we just mentioned is different types of disciplers or different types of leaders. And so my wife was bringing up some different examples. Yahusha said things in the New Testament when one of his disciples said, "Oh, I got family members that are being buried. You know what I mean? I got to bury my family members." And he said, "Let the dead bury the dead." Basically like, come follow me, let the dead bury the dead. It sounds very disrespectful. While on the flip side, you have 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 19 to 21. I mean, you found all this stuff. You should be talking about it.
Yeah, I can go through this one.
Elijah and Elisha.
Yeah, so in stop, Bam Bam. Don't mind me, our little itty bitty is trying to get to the mouse right now. So in 1 Kings 19, verses 19 to 21. So 1 Kings 19:19, it says, so he departed from there, being Eliyahu or Elijah. So he departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, while he was plowing with 12 yoke in front of him, and he with the 12th. And Elisha or Eliah came over to him and threw his cloak on him. Then he left the oxen behind and ran after Elisha and said, "Please let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will follow you." And Eliah said to him, or Elijah said to him, "Go back, for what have I done to you?" So he returned from following him and took the pair of oxen and sacrificed them and cooked their meat with the implements of the oxen and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he got up and followed Elisha or Eliah and served him. This is a different type of discipler. So for here, as Elijah is going, he threw his mantle upon Elisha, and Elisha's like, "Well, let me go say bye to my family," right? And he was able to do so. He went. I mean, he literally did a whole slaughtering. He killed the oxen. He had the sacrifice made. He gave the people to eat, and then he followed him. Versus when my husband was talking about Yahusha's like, "Let the dead bury the dead. Come follow me." Like I'm on the move. Versus we look at Paul. Paul wind up circumcising. You had brought this up. Paul wind up circumcising Timothy, but he didn't circumcise Titus at that time. Or later, going back to the Tanakh.
And people, Christians like to bring up, oh, the reason why he circumcised Timothy is because Paul was afraid of the Jews and all this other stuff. No, listen, Paul was very clear when he preached about circumcision and uncircumcision. Paul was very clear. He made it very clear that you don't have to be circumcised to be saved. Point blank, period. Okay? However, he never said when someone should be circumcised. Neither does the law of Moses say that. The law of Moses doesn't say you shall circumcise a Gentile immediately as soon as he comes into the land of Israel. The Old Testament doesn't say you shall circumcise a Gentile immediately the moment he hears the Torah for the first time, if he wants to be saved or if he wants to be declared righteous. You don't hear this. This is only stuff that is made up through Jewish tradition or the Judean Talmudic traditions and doctrines of men, also found in the New Testament, because that's when that doctrine was going rampant, or Christianity. They're the only ones, and Christianity is borrowing it from the Jewish people. So they're doing what I was doing earlier about blaming the leadership of the Bible, of the scriptures. I'm blaming the leadership of the scriptures on corrupt churches. Is the same thing that Christians are doing. They're blaming the corruption of the circumcision instructions on they're blaming the scriptures rather than the corrupt leadership that is distorting the circumcision doctrine. So Paul, he was different leadership. He was treating some person, one person differently than the other. And so there isn't these, basically the reason why we're bringing this up is because there are times when a leader is going to make a decision or give an instruction or give a command that is not necessarily verbatim in the Ten Commandments or in the law, the book of the law of Moses. Just the other night, we recommended a brother to fall back on preaching to his spouse, and vice versa, that his spouse shouldn't be, they shouldn't even talk about religion no more at this point, because it's turning into arguments. So that's a command. I as a leader am giving a recommendation, a command that you can't go to in scripture and say, oh, here, brother, it says, whenever thou come to this moment, thou shalt stop. You know what I mean? So like my wife was saying, that spirit of Korah, when you have people that have that spirit of Korah, they don't want to submit to no leadership. They don't want to be under no leadership. This type of stuff is very uncomfortable for them. But I would like to believe that not everyone that was in the wilderness was stubborn. There was always a remnant. But nonetheless, sometimes the congregation is affected by the rebellion of a small group of people. And in this particular case, we can see that. So now everybody has to stay in their tents. Now everybody's been commanded to stay in their tents because some idiots wanted to go outside with their shovels and sickles and all their, agricultural tools to start gathering, manna or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of a topic we were bringing up. I don't know if you have more examples on that list.
The only other example was like Eli and Samuel. Eli was a priest, and Samuel was looking after him. Eli's children, however, this is in First Samuel. You can find the stories. But Eli's sons, they were wicked men, and Eli was not taking care of them in the sense of, I mean, technically they should have been killed. They weren't supposed to have that position anymore because they were not obeying the commands of Yahuwah. But Samuel still followed after Eli. He still learned from him. So again, there's just different, just reiterating, there's different types of discipleship. There's different types of leadership styles, and there is room for a leader to be able to, again, give instructions to the congregation or to their disciples based on the context of whatever situation that they are talking about or going through. Alrighty, so going to the last portion here in Exodus 16. Just going to read that here. And it says, and the house of Israel named the bread manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and its taste was like wafers with honey. Then Moses said, this is what Yahuwah has commanded. A full omer of it is to be kept safe through your generations, so that they may see the bread that I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. And Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put a full omer of manna in it, and place it before Yahuwah to be kept safe throughout your generations. As Yahuwah commanded Moses, so Aaron placed it before the testimony to be kept. And the sons of Israel ate the manna for 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate the manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Now, an omer is a tenth of an ephah. Another thing that we gathered from there was this aspect of, and we mentioned this quite a bit throughout Exodus, is remembering the commands of Yahuwah, remembering his Torah, memorializing things, putting it to memory, literally. And they physically had the manna to be able to remember all that encompassed it, and basically how Yahuwah provided them bread from heaven. And if you watch the last video series within Exodus, we mentioned the bread from heaven being Yahusha. I mean, it's a beautiful depiction of the gospel and Yahusha being able to be the living bread and that living water for us. But again, we need to be able to memorialize the things of Yahuwah. We need to put the scripture to memory. And I personally am not book verse, book chapter verse, like, oh, it said here. I'm more of a thus it is written type of person, but still it needs to be within our hearts. These stories, the actions, whether the good or bad that our forefathers took, so that we can literally learn from it. We're supposed to be able to take these into account, take how our forefathers grumbled or how others did not, and be able to look and say, Yahuwah, you know, where are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to do it? How do we not want to be like Korah? What does that look like? How are we supposed to be able to submit to our leadership? At the same time, leadership, how are you supposed to lead a congregation? How are you supposed to be humble and yet at the same time, when you need to have that righteous anger to get out cancers from the assembly. So in a nutshell, we need to be able to remember all that Yahuwah has done for us, as well as our forefathers, to walk in his ways.
I like to tell Christians, if you're claiming to be a follower of Christ, well, Christ he was the Lord of the Sabbath. And I tell my brothers and sisters, if we follow Messiah Yahusha, follow him in keeping the Sabbath. He's the Lord of the Sabbath. He's the master of the Sabbath.
Which doesn't
The
mean he took
Sabbath
it
didn't
away.
start. Yeah, which it doesn't make sense. That means he took it away. If he's the Lord of it, that means that it still exists. The Sabbath still exists, and it didn't exist after the death and resurrection of the Messiah. It existed way back in the beginning of creation. The day was already set apart. The day was already holy since the seventh day after things were created. So the first seventh day of the week was made holy from the beginning. And here we see in Exodus, we're starting to see this Sabbath idea, this concept of keeping it as a perpetual cultural, religious observance. We're starting to see this come into fruition, and it's not temporary just for a couple weeks or a couple months or a couple generations. It's actually to be remembered. I don't know if the verse mentioned any of this in there. No. Okay. But we're starting to see this come to life. We're starting to see the Sabbath as an ordinance, as an actual command coming to life. And we didn't see this before. So if you follow Messiah, he's the Lord of the Sabbath. Keep the Sabbath with him and with his people. That's it.